Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ethan. Today we are going over dinosaur footprints over in northern North America, as well as what's going on with penguins over in New Zealand, and taking a look at what new discovery of stegosaurs. And we're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. So let's head back to the Mesozoic era. From Sci News, new Stegosaur species had remarkable dermal armor. A new Stegosaurian genus and species from the Middle Jurassic epoch has been identified from the postcranial remains found in the Middle Atlas Mountains south of Fes, Morocco. Well, this is definitely not a place that we often find stegosaurs. It's usually over in southern Europe, even different parts of the British Isles as well, and then over in certain areas of Asia and North America. There might have been a couple of individuals inhabiting different parts of South America, but Morocco over in Northern Africa is very rare or almost non existent. This probably isn't
That just
uh,
looks weird.
it's not the representation likely of the new animal. It looks somewhat familiar and is a life reconstruction of Decenturus armatus. So a sister species of Thyreosaurus atellasticus. I was actually thinking it might have been Miragaia, but Miragaia is another species of stegosaur that existed during the late Jurassic around 150 million years ago over in adjacent Iberia or Portugal and Spain. So the plate arrangements of Miragaia are a bit different, though. I believe the thagomizers extend into the back a bit more, at least covering the pelvis area. Whereas on this species, it seems to be pretty typical stegosaur, skinny stegosaur plates on the pelvic region. This lineage of stegosaurs that animals like Decenturus and Miragaia belong to tend to have, for some reason, much longer but thinner plates when it comes to width, or shorter plates in width, compared to their body size. Um, but it's just a bit of a question as to why specifically. I don't believe they would have provided really any more defense, if not possibly less, than the larger plates or the larger osteoderms that animals like Stegosaurus had over in North America. But definitely the longer thagomizers are along the tail might have been useful as a just simply a better weapon in some cases than certain other Stegosaurus species. They also had a longer neck too, so it was almost a bit of a sauropod trait, or
Oh,
maybe a prosauropod.
oh, that's depicting that.
Yeah, that is a realistic Decenturus depiction. So, Thyreosaurus atlasticus lived in northern Africa during the Middle Jurassic epoch, approximately 165 million years ago. So, this is a much earlier species. Animals like the more famous Stegosaurus won't evolve until somewhere around 152 million years ago. Um, I guess to this point, about 12 to 13 million years later. The stegosaurs did evolve much earlier into the Jurassic, but at this point is when we're seeing much larger sizes with this group. They would also live until somewhere around 110 million years ago during the early Cretaceous period. So the species is closely the referring to the Thyreosaurus. Closely related to Decenturus, a member of the clade Decenturinae within the Thyrophoran dinosaur family Stegosauridae. So, Thyrophora is a diverse clade of herbivores, ornithischian dinosaurs composed of stegosaurs, ankylosaurs, and basal forms, said Dr. Mustafa Okasu from the Hassan II University of Casablanca and colleagues. Yeah, so the Thyrophorans are the large group of ornithischian dinosaurs that first evolved during the early Jurassic about 201 million years ago. And they would live on until the very end of the Cretaceous around 66 million years ago. You just have it where different species of Stegosauridae, well, virtually all of them went extinct about 110 million years ago. But the ankylosaurs and nodosaurs would still live on into the very end of the Cretaceous. And the ankylosaurs, for sure, dominated pretty much the whole world. We have found them in different parts of Africa, Australia, Antarctica, and even South America. They're just not as abundant as certain areas of Asia, North America. Might be Europe where the ankylosaurs are probably the rarest. Notosaur. Well, okay, if you're including the notosaurs, it's not necessarily true. We have found a number of notosaurs over in Europe, like Polycanthus. So thyrophorans have an extensive fossil record spanning from the lower Jurassic to the upper Cretaceous, which is best known from well-preserved specimens in Laurasia. So Laurasia referring to North America, so composing of North America, Asia, and Europe. Okay, so what else is going on here? In contrast, fossil remains are poorly known and mostly partial in Gondwana. So this is referring to the massive continent that would consist of South America, Africa, Australia, and Antarctica. In Africa, thyrophorans could have been present since the early Middle Jurassic. Stegosaurian body fossils are documented in the Middle Jurassic of Morocco, the Upper Jurassic of Tanzania, and the Lower Cretaceous of South Africa. Yeah, that was actually hitting my mind earlier when it came to stegosaurs over in Africa. They tend to be found over in the eastern part of the country. So, really, Tanzania being the hotspot, possibly Mozambique. I'm not sure about Kenya, but definitely Northern Africa is quite rare. West Africa is almost non-existent if you're talking about Western Sub-Saharan Africa or different species of dinosaurs in general. It tends to be quite fragmentary due to the sediments and just the overall geographical regions. So African ankylosaurs are represented only by Spicomelis afer from the Middle Jurassic of Morocco. The disarticulated partial skeleton of Thyreosaurus atlasicus was found in the gray marls of the Elmers III Formation in the northern Bulafa locality near Bulumini, Middle Atlas of Morocco. Okay, let's see. I guess let's bring up another species of Stegosaurus.
Hold on, give me 1 second. Okay.
So Monkosaurus.
Okay, I'm sure you're gonna tear this one apart.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any species of stegosaur that had this type of an arrangement of plates as well as thagomizers. However, you could say that when it comes to the size of the plates on its back, it might resemble those of a younger juvenile stegosaurus, or in this case, a Monconosaurus, which you could say does have a somewhat similar physiology to the Stegosaurus, but it is not, however, the same species. Actually, I will correct myself. The Thagomizer arrangement is slightly different on Mechonosaurus than it is on Stegosaurus. I believe there are more Thagomizers. Trying to think of what specific animal it could be facing off in this instance. This animal did not inhabit North America. In fact, it was over in Asia and specifically China during the late Jurassic, around 151 million years ago. So around the same time as Stegosaurus was inhabiting North America. But this animal was probably half the size of Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus could reach well over 30 feet or pushing 9 meters and probably weigh somewhere around 5 tons or slightly larger with the larger species of Stegosaurus. Certain smaller species could probably be in the 2 to 3 ton range. And also having to deal with larger carnivores such as Allosaurus
Okay,
in
I'm just
different regions.
putting this up because I like pictures.
This is likely a Tarkia ankylosaur, and it's probably, I'm guessing, facing off the little,
It looks like they're having a
um,
powwow.
yeah, Praenocephaly from Mongolia. This is from Prehistoric Planet. Um, these animals would have existed towards the very end of the Cretaceous, around 71 million years ago. So they did not come into contact with any species of stegosaur. And even the ankylosaurs in general, when it came to Ankylosauridae itself, didn't really make contact with the stegosaurs either. Possibly the nodosaurs did in different regions, but not the ankylosaurs. And the pachycephalosaurs also did not come into contact with stegosaurs. You could say for face, this is okay. When it comes to the beak structure and cheek musculature of stegosaurs, it's very much for debate. Much more so in many cases than compared to different species of ornithopods or the guanodontids, the later hadrosaurs or hadrosauromorphs. Um, there tends to be a lot more agreement when it comes to how the cheek structure of hadrosaurs would have been reconstructed, but stegosaurs, it's still a bit up for debate, but it does seem to be on many reconstructions that the cheek is extended towards the beak. Well, the very front of the snout. And so it'd just be a small part where the beak is. And also, there would not really be any teeth in that specific region. So, within the beak itself. And some reconstructions, there might be certain teeth, but what I'm referring to is older depictions. So, like back from the 1960s or the 1970s,
Wait, so they had teeth or didn't have teeth?
they had teeth like towards the back of their mouth, but not in the front, like within the beak itself.
So they have beaks and teeth.
Yes. A lot of different species of dinosaurs were like this, like the hadrosaurs themselves.
Birds have that?
The only
I mean, ducks
bir-
have them, but
animals like ducks, and you could even possibly say penguins to an extent, do have. Well, I might be thinking of their tongue.
that's what
Um,
I was thinking.
somewhat teeth-like structures, but they're not true teeth. There were earlier species of bird that did have true teeth, like later into the Cretaceous period, especially really thinking of the late Cretaceous, the more iconic aquatic birds such as the Hesperornids had teeth inside their beaks.
Is this correct?
Um, Yeah, this is pretty much a Moncanosaurus. So this might have been what I was thinking of when it came to the reconstruction of the spikes. It's not necessarily that they had more than Stegosaurus; they're just slightly, like a bit differently arranged. But overall, it is quite a similar morphology to the Stegosaurus. Now, in this case, um,
This one's showing it.
well, it also looks like an adult. Yeah, slightly longer thagomizers compared to its overall body length, but this could also occur in different species of Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus might have had, however, much wider thagomizers compared to its body size. And as you can see on this reconstruction, much more so than the last, it's showing Stegosaurus like plates, but they're still thinner. Not to the same extent as the Decenturids of different parts of Europe, but I guess somewhere in the middle. So having like especially towards the center of the body, much thinner plates, and then a bit wider, like the probably larger Stegosaur species, like in terms of the top parts of the osteoderms.
Okay, that's not one.
No, that's probably representing some other species, slightly related to Kentrosaurus, possibly, or even Thriongosaurus. So I'm referring to different species over in Africa as well as East Asia. They were the Stegosaurs in general were quite successful over in different parts of Asia. In some cases, a bit more so than North America. We still have a number of species in the continent.
I like how you say that in the continent. Not on it. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I guess that could work for where the fossils are, considering they're in the ground. Well, speaking of you bringing up that ankylosaur picture, African ankylosaurs are represented only by spicomalus affer from the Middle Jurassic of Morocco. Oh, I already said that. Okay, so in 2021, during a geological mapping mission south of Bulaman, we discovered a new site rich in dinosaur remains in the Elmer's III Formation. This site, named Bulafa North, is located north of the Bulafa Quarry. The material was collected over several consecutive field trips and consists of a partial postcranial skeleton of a stegosaur that includes dorsal vertebrae and ribs, a limb bone, and dermal armor. This is definitely not something we find very often when it comes to stegosaurs and having exterior armor outside of the plates and the spikes, which are usually referred to its only source of armor. According to the team, Thyreosaurus atlasticus had an asymmetric, bizarre dermal armor unique among stegosaurs. The dermal armor of Thyreosaurus atlasticus consists of thick, up to 4 centimeters or 1.6 inches, um, subovate to subrectangular shaped osteoderms. Interesting. I haven't heard of this before. So the asymmetrical texture of their sides, one roughly ornamented with small pits and fiber bundles, the other with a well-marked cross-hatched pattern, is clearly different from from that observed to date in other stegosaurs and ankylosaurs. The bone histology of these osteoderms is reminiscent of that of stegosaurian tail spines. Huh. Like, so the overall structure is, oh, that's interesting. That I was definitely not expecting. So it's adjacent to like the tail spikes, it seems. Unless it's referring to the like plate-like osteoderms, because I would think you would mention or the paleontologist would mention thagomizers. It is interpreted that these osteoderms were arranged in a recumbent position over the body of the animal instead of an erect position. So, Thyreosaurus atlasticus had an estimated body length of over 6 meters, or about 19.7 feet. Axial characters indicate that the specimen belongs to a medium to large size stegosaur. Yeah, I guess it's like medium size, about 19.7 feet, or pushing 6 meters, considering the Stegosaurus was practically the largest species of stegosaur to exist, so pushing around 30 feet or 9 meters. The holotype corresponds to an adult individual who did not reach its maximum body size. Oh, okay. Well, that's somewhat nice to hear. Well, in terms of it being able to become larger, it's unfortunate that it still perished. The discovery of
If it
Thyreosaurus
was
at
still alive today, I mean,
yeah, that would be nice. Um, the discovery of Thyreosaurus atlasticus is important in understanding the evolutionary history of stegosaurs and other thyrophorian dinosaurs. The recent discoveries of Adraticlet and Thyreosaurus atlasticus provide insight into the early evolution of stegosaurs in the Middle Jurassic of Africa. I'm not familiar with this Adraticlet species of stegosaur. I'm guessing it does not belong to the Decenturids, and it's another lineage of Stegosaur entirely. So this was really good to hear. Let's head forward to another part of the Mesozoic. So, from Sci News, Nanoshook Formation's dinosaur tracks provide new information about mid Cretaceous paleoclimate. So, paleontologists have examined a large assemblage of dinosaur tracks and fossilized plants from the Nanoshook Formation, which crops out over much of the central and western north slope of Alaska, varying from 1,500 to 250-meter or 4,921 to 820 feet thick from west to northeast. So the Nanoshook Formation is over in northern Alaska, but takes place somewhere around 90 million years ago during the early late Cretaceous. So this is not necessarily referring to the Prince Creek Formation, which takes place somewhere around 73 million years ago. And we have found a few different species of dinosaurs over in the Prince Creek Formation. The Nanoshook Formation, we have found fragments of different dinosaurs, like different ornithischians, theropods, but it doesn't seem to be really any. Um, oh, wait a second. I could be a bit off. I think there are certain species of dinosaurs that have been discovered here,
I would have
but
walked right past this.
not necessarily clarified. Yeah, it is identifying those distinct markings and the overall shape, especially of like the base of the foot. And considering the dinosaurs, all of them walked on their toes specifically. There would have been a base, like with what you see in modern day species of birds, but they did not walk on their ankles like people or kangaroos or even bears. So I'm guessing this is possibly like an early tyrannosaur footprint. It could. I definitely not a dromaeosaur. And when it comes to the other types of carnivores that were roaming North America at this point, I can't really think of anything else that might be roaming this area. The allosaurs, the different species of megalosaurs have pretty much vanished from North America at this point. If yeah, I don't believe there are any. Um, And when it comes to the other Coelurosaurs, like the Megaraptors, they were never present over in North America. So I can't think of anything besides a mysterious Tyrannosaur in the region. Maybe something more closely related to the earlier Lythronax, which is a species of early Tyrannosaur. So we've had projects for the last 20 years in Alaska trying to integrate sedimentology, dinosaur paleontology, and the paleoclimate indicator, said University of Alaska Fairbanks professor Paul McCarthy. We've done work in three other formations in Denali on the North Slope and in Southwest Alaska, and they're about 70 million years old. Yeah, they're much younger. Seems to be like even younger than the Prince Creek Formation. And 70 million years ago over in North America, it's a bit of a mysterious time as to what specifically is going on in a wide variety of different ecosystems. There does seem to be certain species of ceratopsians roaming the area, but it's a mystery when it comes to the tyrannosaurs. There's a bit of a blank, almost as if this is around the time that T Rex mysterious ancestors would have migrated into North America and eventually in a couple million years time become T-Rex. But it's still a mystery at this point. The larger tyrannosaurs by this point of the Cretaceous, Albertosaurus, Gorgosaurus, Daspletosaurus, have vanished. However, over in Mongolia, you did have a large species, the Tarbosaurus, existing. So, also when it comes to the sauropods, it's a bit of a mystery at this point as well over in North America. The later titanosaurs. So this new one is in a formation that's about 90 to 100 million years old. What interested us about looking at rocks of this age is this is roughly the time that people think of as the beginning of the Bering land bridge, the connection between Asia and North America. Yeah, I think many for certain people that are somewhat familiar with the land bridge that existed during the Ice Age or the Pleistocene epoch during the Cenozoic era, so about 2 million years ago. They're just really maybe familiar with woolly mammoths, certain species of Ice Age big cats, bears, rhinos, migrating back and forth from Asia to North America to Asia. And it would have actually happened several times earlier in the Cenozoic era, the age of mammals, as well as back into the Mesozoic and even further, like into the Permian. So, yeah, this is not surprising, but it's still interesting to hear considering um, when it comes to the different migration routes between North America and Asia, this doesn't come up too often. Um, hmm, well, I guess since we're here about 90 million years ago, let's bring up Zuniceratops. So Zunicerat.
Why does it look like he has a hand?
It's not a bad ceratopsian foot, or at least even for Zuniceratops, but the problem is that the last two fingers seem to be clawed, and they shouldn't. They should be blunt, so not having a claw. Besides that, seems okay. So Zuniceratops is one of the earlier species of the ceratopsian lineage. However, at this point, around 90 to 92 million years ago, the ceratopsids, which would become the larger group of ceratopsians into the later Cretaceous, have not evolved yet. They will not evolve until somewhere around 81 to 82 million years ago. So basically, about a million years after the hadrosaurs would evolve too. But Zuniceratops is one of the predecessors to this lineage, and it was discovered over in New Mexico. This animal was also not much more than 13 to 14 feet in length, or pushing somewhere around 4.2 meters, and likely fed on different species of ferns and flowers, as well as smaller shrubs in the region. It likely lived in small herds. I don't believe we have found many specimens of Zuniceratops. It's not a common animal over in late Cretaceous, New Mexico. It did coexist with different species of Therizinosaur theropods, such as the Nothronicus in the region, and even earlier tyrannosaurs, such as Suski tyrannus. I'm not exactly sure about the sauropods that might have inhabited the region. Well, this is an odd reconstruction. It's like somebody stuck the frill of a protoceratops and then decided to add small horns to the front that seem a bit off-centered and a very small nose horn, almost like that of what you see in certain later centrosaur species of ceratopsids. So, um, yeah, even the beak looks a little um like it's drawn too far back or stretched too far back.
Wait, wait, I got a better one.
Yeah, it's like a Proceratops ceratopsid hybrid. That's the okay. I think the horns might be a bit long, but besides that, actually, I don't think it's that bad of a Zuniceratops. I think the beak might actually be a little um like hovering over the bottom beak compared to certain other lineages of ceratopsid. However, you could say that a wide range of different species of ceratopsian had a slightly a longer beak compared to their upper beak compared to their bottom beak. But anyway, heading over to the frill, I think it looks okay. It doesn't have that protoceratopsid look of the other. It is interesting they added feathers towards the back of this animal. I don't believe we have any evidence for Zuniceratops consisting of feathers. This one seems like a toy. It's not, but um, it also has a bit of a Protoceratopsid look to it too. But there's another species of smaller ceratopsian that's not hitting me that this somewhat resembles. It does have a fourth clawed toe, though. I would say that, maybe it is with Zuniceratops. It just wasn't hitting me. It's very possible that this animal does not have a very long nasal horn. Yeah, it's showing up with a wide variety of them. Okay, so I was just thinking it was only occurring on different species of later larger centrosaurs as well as even earlier ceratopsians. And it was occurring with Zuniceratops having a very flat nasal horn. You could almost even call it like a somewhat smaller dome, like with what you would see in later species such as Pachyrhinosaurus. But Pachyrhinosaurus definitely did not have the longer protruding eye socket horns. And also, when it comes to Zuniceratops's frill, it is a bit more lightly built compared to later species, but it's quite robust for its time. It does I mean, it had it to, defend itself against especially Suski tyrannus and even engaging in combat with other Zuniceratops individuals during the breeding season.
Okay, this one I just find funny.
Yeah, this looks pretty realistic. I think this is a very good reconstruction. Yeah, there's not even a nasal horn almost at all in this instance.
I
Um,
just meant the facial expressions of these 2.
yeah, maybe I was off on the frill structure because almost all of them, except I think that last picture, have a somewhat like Protoceratopsid sort of a look. Zuniceratops, though, is not part of the Protoceratopsid lineage. And technically, the Protoceratopsid lineage had not evolved yet. It was a very brief family back in the um, early Maastrichtian stage of the Cretaceous. Like they existed for about 3 million years and then disappeared. So here we have Suski tyrannus, and despite it looking like a younger tyrannosaur, it's not.
How
That
could
would
you
be
tell that
what?
who it is?
Suski tyrannus seems to be the only species of tyrannosaur from this part of New Mexico, also at this time. And it is also quite unique among these earlier tyrannosaurs, especially during the early late Cretaceous, considering it has 3 fingers. We already had animals roaming Mongolia also around the same time, but also possibly later to around 89 to 88 million years ago with Electrosaurus. But Electrosaurus only had 2 fingers, but also that could have you could have had it where Electrosaurus came shortly after Electrosaurus was in its last maybe few 100,000 years of reign. There's also another species of hadrosaur in the background. It's not hitting me who that
Oh,
could be. It's probably some early hadrosauromorph because the hadrosaurs have not evolved yet. They also won't evolve for another 8 to 9 million years. There is another species of ankylosaur I'd like to bring up. The Anodontosaurus. So Anedont, os. I guess this is a somewhat okay reconstruction of Anodontosaurus, but it probably did not have this type of a tail spike appearance like with what you would see in different species of nodosaurs.
talking about the
And
club?
no, 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 up and towards the upper part of the tail.
Oh,
Tail club looks okay. The overall core looks a little too tall. Members of Ankylosauridae were quite wide, but this animal um, was existing much later into the Cretaceous compared to when Zuniceratops and Suski tyrannus was roaming the region. The Tyrannosaur in the background is probably supposed to represent an animal like Gorgosaurus. But Anodontosaurus was found over in the Horseshoe Canyon Formation of Alberta, Canada. So around 73 to 74 million years ago, roaming the different floodplains and open conifer forests of Alberta at this point.
okay,
And it
how's
was
this?
this is actually a bit better. It's got that wider appearance. These animals were not built for running. And what is interesting when it comes to the different species of ankylosaurs, when it comes to the upper shoulder blade, like the front shoulder blades, as well as even the neck structure, this ankylosaur, it almost has a bit of like a nodosaur sort of appearance to it. So, not necessarily having full on spikes towards the sides of its neck, but definitely much longer reinforced osteoderms. Though there are certain, you could say, notosaur characteristics, especially towards the upper back, like with what you would see in Eupliocephalus to a smaller extent.
Okay, John Doe said, "In New York City at the American Museum of Natural History, we have an apex a new Stegosaurian" wait, sorry. Stegosaur why is my eyes are tired. Stegosaurus, on display for 3 more years.
Well, that's really good to hear. It's unfortunate when they do that, and it's like it's a new specimen is at a museum for a limited amount of time. And I think the excuse is, well, it's a traveling display or it's on tour. But it's still yeah, quite unfortunate that it has to go. But yeah, I mean that's great to hear. I wonder what specific species that is. Um Sounds like it's been known for some time considering you already have a full display of it.
Wait, I have a funny one. Hold on.
I went there was that back in, I'm guessing we're referring to, yeah, New York, right? I think was that 2012 or so. It's just glimpses that I remember, but yeah, great museum. Great animal hall. Um, I'd say better than the Smithsonian. The problem I had with the Smithsonian is like, especially when it comes to the animal exhibit, it feels too crowded and pushed together. Um, I didn't mind their marine reptile exhibit region, but also when it came to the dinosaurs, kind of blurry with New York. I do like that. Um, Gosh, I think it was supposed to be like the Barosaurus over the Allosaurus. I'd see it in the books consistently and was finally being able to see it.
So HMNS is the best?
Definitely considering we have the best Triceratops on Earth, and we also have one of the best T Rex on display. We also have the best Diplodocus. But the American Museum of Natural History is great as well. It was really my only um the only place I went to New York that I had any actual fun at. Um, wasn't a big fan of the musicals. So let's see. And the Central Park Zoo. I'm not going to say really much about it, but anyway, Central Park itself was okay.
Wait a minute. John Doe said a complete new Stegosaur species.
Maybe specifically of Stegosaurus itself, and they found a new species. I'll have to take a closer look at that. I definitely didn't hear about this. But back to these these ankylosaurs. So these are members of Ankylosauridae, the anodontosaurs. They're not as large as the later Ankylosaurs or even the Euoplocephalus, but these animals still reached somewhere between 14 to 17 feet in length, or pushing between 4.2 to around 5.1 meters, and probably weighed around a ton and a half.
It's not a completely new species.
Oh,
It's
um,
just the largest and most complete Stegosaur skeleton ever discovered.
Oh, whoa. Okay, well that's yeah, that sounds really intriguing. I wonder how large that specific Stegosaurus is. I'm guessing it's like of a Stegosaurus ungulatus.
It has 254 of its 319 bones.
Wow. That's really good to hear. I mean, especially coming from the late Jurassic. Um Yeah, I'm wondering, like, specifically what form. Well, I'm thinking it's likely coming from the Morrison Formation, just where specifically over in Colorado, Utah, or Wyoming did they discover it from? Um, hmm. Yeah, I'll have to definitely take a look. Specifically, at just um like what parts of the specimen in general and where it was discovered. Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope are very proud.
It's not been officially identified.
Um.
That's a
Oh.
lot of bones for them not to have been able to determine what.
Yeah, it is. I wonder if they didn't find the skull. I mean, that can put up a lot of questions. Um,
Just a Stegosaurus ungulus.
yeah, ungulatus. Um, hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess it's not too surprising that there's not necessarily a lot of agreement, but it's just the closest representative to what they. It's a close representation to what they discovered.
Legiano Comics. Good evening.
Hello, fellow Archosaur. So, yeah, when it comes to, I'm guessing it's showing somewhat dimorphism here, and I think this might be from like Path of Titans. But, yeah, I'd say when it comes to the ankylosaurs in general, It's like Anodontosaurus focused a lot of its armor, especially when adding a lot of the larger osteoderms around its whole skull structure, which is something that you somewhat see in other members of Ankylosauridae. But it's usually that there's maybe four larger um, osteoderms, like towards each side of the face. Well, technically, there's only two on each side. And then the rest is just like a very smooth area of armor. And so when it comes to Anodontosaurus, it just covers every or each side of the face. And yeah, I like how it's even showing like the upper humerus or the upper arm bone with specific
Sogo
arm.
Hotel says, "Wow, those are some fake looking triceratops." He's further back.
Oh, those were not, those were early relatives of Triceratops. Now, whether or not it is a distinct predecessor, I think is still up for debate. It's certainly possible, but that is Zuniceratops, which inhabited New Mexico around 90 million years ago, and possibly parts of Texas, with earlier members of the Tyrannosaur family, such as the more, you could say, skinny built Suski tyrannus. There were also therizinosaurs in the region. So that ceratopsian is going to be much more lightly built compared to Triceratops. See, when it comes to also Anodontosaurus, this specific ankylosaur is an herbivore, so feeding on different species of ferns, flowers.
Okay, John Doe edited. We also have a new Titanosaur species bigger than the room itself, bigger than the room it's in, from the early Cretaceous period.
I'm guessing that might have been like the original but you're saying that it's new. I just remember something occurring a few years back though with the like Patagotitan in either the American Museum of Natural History or the Smithsonian. So maybe it's one of those 120-foot long or um like 35 to 40-meter long sauropods.
Hold on, I'm looking.
It does seem to be with the longest sauropods at this point that we've discovered. They reach somewhere around 130 to 140 feet or pushing over 50 meters.
122-foot long Titanosaur cast at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City and
I think
belonging
that's
to newly discovered species from Patagonia known as Patagotitan. It stretches a full 30 feet longer than the museum's iconic blue whale.
yeah, I think if that's the one, it was put up there a few years ago, but it's still a magnificent specimen considering how overall like the length of the animal, but also it could still weigh over 75 tons. So this animal was likely, depending on the nutritional availability of the different species of plants that it was feeding on, especially different types of conifers, ferns. Technically, it could probably feed on flowers now and then, but that's a lot of lower grazing for the animal to accomplish. Probably not too great for the neck, but it might be okay now and then.
This is the same one. It said they got it in 2016.
Yeah, it's not necessarily new to the area, but
Is it possible they just finished it?
I think it was already accomplished back then. Like, I do remember a certain also replica that was put in the Chicago Field Museum, but that might be somewhat different from what was put in the American Museum of Natural History. Okay, let's head back to the article.
Sogo Hotel said, "Do they have full skeletons of dragons?"
Not yet. Maybe they'll come eventually.
Well, what if dragons were simply pterosaurs?
Um, I mean that certainly is possible, but um I really don't know how to respond to that. I mean, you definitely have it where some of these pterosaurs had wingspans of over 35 to 40 feet in length, or pushing between 10.8 to around 12 meters, but only weighing around maybe 4 to 500 pounds, which These pterosaurs were definitely capable of taking on small to some cases medium-sized dinosaurs for how powerful they were. So I really wouldn't want any species, a modern day mammal or animal in general, having to deal with them. And even in some cases, other animals earlier in the Cenozoic era, like back in the Ice Age or the Pleistocene, um, back in the Pliocene or the Miocene epochs, is how dangerous these pterosaurs were, like the as darkids such as Quetzalcoatlus, Hatzegopteryx, and certain unidentified species over from Asia during the late and early Cretaceous.
John Doe said, I meant it's a new species, but yes, that's the same one.
I do wonder if we found another specimen of Patagotitan. Um, that's definitely intriguing me at the moment. But yeah, also even when it comes to Argentinosaurus is larger, but it's not necessarily longer than Patagotitan. It might be slightly shorter in length. There are certain species like Supersaurus that are longer than Patagotitan, pushing like 130 to 140 feet in length.
John Doe said, paleontologists believe that dinosaur fossil was thought to be dragons, from my understanding.
Um, I need to double check that. I think that was the original thought. There were other depictions though. It wasn't just dragons. There were certain species that were originally thought to be of giant humans or um not necessarily trolls, but maybe they were trolls. They thought they were. Um, just certain types of mythological giants. Sometimes they thought they were giant turtles. What was another thing? Giant Sasquatches or Bigfoots, I think, in some cases. What else? But certain times they thought they were dragons. I think in some other cases, just a wide variety of different giant reptiles. Definitely big lizards in some cases. Now, I think it might have been, I would assume it would be a bit challenging to not be able to like differentiate a pterosaur from a dragon because of how distinct. Now it also depends on the type of dragon that people might be thinking of because there's so many different kinds. Um,
So Go Hotel said, how were they able to determine they could breathe fire due to the shape of their skull or burn marks or something?
yeah, that's always been a question of mine too. How an organism would be able to accomplish something like that. I think it's still quite astounding that certain ones are able to create venom, but that's completely different. Or a high acidic content. I mean, especially just even the types of high acidic digestive juices that we contain, you have to have quite a strong body structure or organ structure to be able to efficiently contain and create that sort of an environment, like an environment within the body itself. Yeah, he might be fighting off a Displetosaur in this case. That's an odd. Hmm.
I was just changing the picture for people.
Yeah, though I will say it's kind of odd how the tail is turned in this case. It looks like he's almost like dislocated it to a certain extent. He would be able to turn it to this somewhat angle, but I just think the tail, I mean, maybe it's just me, it's just the angle that we're looking at it from. Um, but yes, you could have had it where now and then certain Gorgosaurs were a little too, um, I guess, impatient to just go after some Hadrosaurs or maybe some more vulnerable Ceratopsians and decide, no, 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 let's try with an Ankylosaur, which has the ability to easily sever the legs or even the skull. It's a very dangerous proposition to go after an Ankylosaur, especially an Anodontosaurus.
John Doe said mammoth because there's a hole in the middle of the skull and it looks like a monster was thought to be a cyclops.
I do remember that. Yeah, I mean, you could say it makes sense because when you're looking at the front of an elephant skull, you're looking at the front of a mammoth, a mastodon, it does look like a cyclops. And then when you take like a further in-depth examination into elephant morphology, as well as like the um, skull structure as well, and you realize that the eyes are towards the side. Considering that, despite mammoths being slightly more distantly related to African elephants than they are to Asian elephants. It's still quite a similar skull structure in general. You would still have where the eyes are towards the side, and the tusks are pretty similar when it comes to the way that they are protruding from the skull or the enlarged teeth. But that is, yeah, very interesting. You had it where back in the 1700s, I believe into the 1600s too, where different zoologists, naturalists, and earlier paleontologists were working on or doing analyzations on mammoth skeletons or mammoth specimens, as well as mastodon specimens, such as Thomas Jefferson, I believe Benjamin Franklin, the Swedish naturalist Carl Linnaeus, who created the taxonomic tree of life. Definitely later, like you had, I think the naturalist or zoologist from France who also came to the United States to do work on different species of birds or classify or describe different species of birds. I think it was like Frederick von Hugh and like as well. I mean, Charles Darwin was also familiar with the mammoths too. Who else? And then a wide variety of other paleontologists and even the different like zoologists from England, the United States, like France, Germany, that were doing studies on modern day animals over in different parts of Asia were quite, or I guess you could say, somewhat familiar with the discoveries that have been accomplished on mammoths and mastodons, but they just didn't um, focus on that specific area. I just thought I'd bring them up. Okay. Where were we with this stegosaur? So the holotype corresponds to an adult individual who did not reach its maximum body size. And just to remind everybody, I think it seems like we're around 165 million years ago during the late Jurassic. I mean the late mid Jurassic of northern Africa. No, wait a second. No, we're not. Wait a second. No, no, no. We're on the next article.
Oh,
There we go.
sorry, my fault.
That was earlier. Okay, we are about 90 million years ago and looking at a mysterious tyrannosaur footprint. We do not know who this could belong to. It is a mystery over in Alaska back in the late early Cretaceous.
Wait, if you haven't seen it, that's the footprint.
We have found many larger predatory dinosaur footprints, even over in creek beds, like especially over like Dinosaur Valley State Park in Texas, where the Acrocanthosaurus footprints look very much like that specific footprint. And there doesn't seem to be any carnosaurs roaming this region, which is what a acrocanthosaur is, or a member of Allosauridae. We want to know who was using it and how they were using it and what the conditions were like. So, referring to this mysterious theropod, or Coelurosaur. The mid Cretaceous was the hottest point in the Cretaceous period. The Nanoshook formation gives us a snapshot of what a high latitude ecosystem looks on like on a warmer Earth. Yeah, it is about to receive a massive cold front to the Cretaceous period, and then it'll warm up again. So the Nanoshook formation dates to roughly 94 to 113 million years ago. Oh, okay, I was off by 4 million years. In the mid Cretaceous period and about when the Bering Land Bridge began. The field work occurred between 2015 and 2017 and centered on Coke Basin, a circular geologic feature of the formation. So the basin is in the Dalong Mountains foothills along the Cook River. There's your powwow. About 100 kilometers or 60 miles south of Point Lay and 32 kilometers or 20 miles inland from the Chukchi Sea.
Okay, do you know where this is?
So, not exactly, but the Chukchi Sea is situated between Russia and Alaska. Um, Certain polar bears will inhabit the region. No. I'm not too familiar with I have heard of the Nanoshook formation, but not too much about it, but also this specific region. Kind of feeling that this is a large area, especially when referring to Alaska. So, in the area, the paleontologists found approximately 75 fossil tracks and other indicators attributed to dinosaurs living in a riverine or delta setting. Hmm. Well, that's definitely not a small amount. Um,
That didn't help, did it?
no, It was divided into certain sections. In the area, the paleontologists found this place was just crazy rich with dinosaur footprints. One site stands out, said Dr. Anthony Fiorio, a researcher at the New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science. It's like, I guess we've got for certain paleontologists that they're focusing on likely animals like Zuniceratops and Suski tyrannus, since this is close to the time that they're existing over in New Mexico at this point. And they decided to take a look at what's going on in Alaska. Let's see. Technically, we also have a wide variety of other species of dinosaurs that would occur later into the Cretaceous over in New Mexico, especially like the massive Pentaceratops or different species of Pentaceratops. So let's see. We were at a spot where we eventually realized that for at least 366 meters or 400 yards, or pushing around 1,200 feet, we were walking on an ancient landscape. On that landscape, we found large upright trees with little trees in between and leaves on the ground. We had tracks on the ground and fossilized feces or coprolite.
Okay, you mentioned him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so Pentaceratops is a species of ceratopsid. Now that they have evolved, that existed over in New Mexico, and even depending on species, as far north as different parts of Alberta and Montana. So this animal could reach somewhere around 20 to 25 feet in length, or pushing 6 to about 7.8 meters, and probably weighed somewhere around 2 to 3 tons. So it did coexist with different species of carnivores such as Daspletosaurus, and likely also coexisted with different species of ankylosaurs such as Euoplocephalus, possibly Anodontosaurus later on. Also in the more northern regions of the reign of this group,
Is that any good?
this genus. It's okay. I think it's a Jurassic World evolution, Pentaceratops. The nasal horn might be a bit long, but overall, I think it's just that frill seems a bit dull, depending on the species of ceratopsian, but a wide range of them. And also in recent years, there's a lot of um, coloration, different patterns that are added to the frill structure, also to somewhat indicate this animal having very dramatic displays to help attract mates during the breeding season.
Why
At
does
least
this one look like it's a deer?
because this possibly could have occurred during the Cretaceous period, but I think it's a bit of a question. It probably wasn't chewing on cud after it was feeding. Considering this animal also had to take in quite a bit of food each day. I mean, Pentaceratops was probably feeding on somewhere around 150 to 200 pounds of food at least each day, or
John Doe
pushing.
said, "This is a great stream." So I just subscribed and I don't want to miss the next one, but I got to go. Take care and have fun.
Well, thanks, Theropod. Um, or pushing maybe somewhere around 80 to 100 kilograms of food. Also, you probably had it with Pentaceratops. We haven't found as many specimens of them as certain other species of ceratopsians, such as Pachyrhinosaurus and the Centrosaurs or Centrosaurus itself. Now, technically, we have found a wide variety of different Triceratops specimens, especially of Triceratops horridus and Triceratops prorsus. Much more of horridus, however. Pentaceratops, I'm not familiar with how many we have discovered, but this was an herbivore. So it was feeding on different species of shrubs, different species of ferns, maybe occasionally going to snack on certain conifers. It also had one of the longer frills compared to its body size when looking at most of the ceratopsian lineages. Now, they also had somewhat long horns. I wouldn't necessarily say that Pentaceratops had the longest horns of any ceratopsian species. Oh, let's see.
Back to the article.
Okay, so now heading to the article, we found numerous fossilized tree stumps, some 60 centimeters or 2 feet in diameter. It was just like we were walking through the woods of millions of years ago. Yeah, you could say that somewhat. Unfortunately, they're um, either laid down or clear cut. The Nanushuk Formation encompasses rocks of marine and non marine characteristics and composition, but the new research focuses primarily on the non marine sediments exposed along the upper Kukparuk River. You could have added with small trees where ceratopsians are pushing them over to get at certain conifer leaves. I do wonder what the nutrition packed would have been at this point. Also, would have depended on like any sort of ecosystem during the Mesozoic era, the time of the dinosaurs in general, consisting depending on what soils these, soils, even the climate um, that these plants were living in would also definitely give a varied nutritional pact as well. You also have it where certain ecosystems might rely on, like, let's say they're coastal ecosystems, on like fish or certain other organisms coming in from the ocean. Whereas certain other ecosystems, because you would have had dinosaurs in certain coastal regions, especially when it comes to the forests, would not rely on the different organisms coming in from the ocean as much. I think what I'm trying to refer to is like if you think of the salmon over on the coast of Alaska and British Columbia, those specific types of temperate rainforests rely specifically on the fish for nutrients. There are other different
Wait, are
ecos.
you referencing the soils?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There are other different ecosystems like off the coasts of Europe that do not rely on fish for sustenance. They are completely self-sustaining when it comes to their own like fallen leaves and maybe like even bark, just wood, mainly due to the amount of nutrients that they obtain just simply from the soils that they already exist in. Whereas the forests over in Alaska and Canada, and you could possibly include maybe certain parts of Russia and northern Japan in this too, um, they do not maintain as many nutrients. So that's why they need the fish. It might have been a certain case or a similar case in certain parts of the Mesozoic, especially like in certain areas of northern Africa where you had the spinosaurs feeding on a wide variety of fish. You could have had it where the forests in the region were relying on those species of fish that the spinosaurs were feeding on for sustenance. But I definitely have to take a look into whether or not we have gained any knowledge on that. But heading back to this mysterious Alaskan formation. So, one of the things we did in our paper was look at the relative frequencies of the different kinds of dinosaurs. What was interesting to us was that the bipedal plant eaters were clearly the most abundant. So, two legged plant eaters accounted for 59% of the total tracks discovered. Whoa, two-legged plant eaters. Who are these individuals? Oh, maybe they're much smaller, like the bipedal thessaliosaurians or the little bipedal ornithopods. So maybe weighing some around 200 pounds or pushing about 90 kilograms. Four-legged plant eaters accounted for 17%. So I'm guessing these might be larger hadrosauromorphs or later iguanodontids in the region, as well as maybe earlier ceratopsians, with birds accounting for 15%. And these would pretty much be true birds for the late Cretaceous period. And non avian, mostly carnivorous bipedal dinosaurs at 9%. Well, that's okay. So it's probably also referring to the large track up top. Some mysterious um, tyrannosaurs and maybe even dromaeosaurs in the region. So, one of the things that was interesting is the relative frequency of bird tracks. Carbon isotope analysis of wood samples led to a determination that the region received about 178 centimeters or 70 inches of precipitation annually. Whoa, that's not necessarily like the highest that you hear of today because you can have it where certain temperate rainforests they obtain some of the most water on Earth when it comes to rain specifically. But it's not usually ever a downpour. It's usually like just a constant drizzle. It might just stop from here and there. Um, but this is kind of what it's reminding me of. I'm trying to think certain other ecosystems because you can have it where the temperate rainforest can receive, in some cases, over 200 inches of rain a year, but definitely somewhere between 140 to 180 inch realm. or what, pushing trying to think what that could be in centimeters. Um, yeah, maybe I'm not sure, 3 to 400 centimeters, annually. So, this record of increased precipitation during the mid Cretaceous provides new data that supports global precipitation patterns associated with the Cretaceous thermal maximum. The Cretaceous thermal maximum was a long term trend approximately 90 million years ago, in which average global temperatures were significantly higher than those of today.
Inches or square inches?
Just inches, because we're just talking about rainfall. The temperature was much warmer than it is today, and what's possibly more interesting is that it rained a lot.
508 centimeters.
Yeah, there we go. How many inches did you?
200.
Well, um, hmm. Yeah, I'll have to definitely do a review on what ecosystem today would be similar. But that is quite interesting. You definitely would have had series of floodplains occurring at this point. Now, I do wonder if those certain instances, but we're also talking about 90 million years ago. I'm thinking of like somewhere around 75 to 80 million years ago. It's also a bit more often talked about and even researched. But also because at this point in the Cretaceous, we also receive far fewer different species of dinosaurs, and not just even North America, practically the whole world. Yeah, there are certain areas of, I believe, possibly Australia, but definitely like Mongolia, China, where we do receive certain species of theropods, like the kynathid gigantoraptors, earlier tyrannosaurs like the Electrosaurus. But besides that, smaller ceratopsians, it's quite devoid of species and certain sauropods too. Okay, well, this was definitely a bit mysterious, but good to see too. Okay, let's head forward in time to the Cenozoic era. Yum. Okay, from Sci News, rare New Zealand penguins are three distinct subspecies, new study shows. So, for decades, scientists treated the yellow eyed penguin, Megadiptes antipodes, as a single species split into two broad populations.
Oh, he's a demon penguin?
Actually, let's look up the yellow eyed penguin. He does exist. I no. See, yellow is Yellow.
Okay, I can spell that.
Some people might not know. I guess if you had to type out Megadiptes antipodes, maybe you need help.
Yes.
Let's see. So, a new genomic study has shattered that picture, revealing three deeply separate lineages that have been isolated from one another for thousands of years. Well, there he is. You can see the slight bit of yellow on him.
Hold on. I
These
got a better one.
these penguins do inhabit the southern main island of New Zealand. They are not necessarily Antarctic penguins. They're mainly restricted to the New Zealand area, and they are distinct from the little penguins over in adjacent southern Australia. And these are also a bit larger. They also inhabit three or four islands adjacent to the southern main island of New Zealand. They are just tiny compared to that main island. However, when it comes to the penguin size, the males average around 12 pounds or pushing about 5.5 kilograms. And the females are somewhere around 11 pounds or pushing, think about 5 kilograms. Yeah, this is a pretty decent,
I just thought
depiction of
that
this
was
animal.
better to show his eyes.
Oh, yeah, that is a really good picture of him. So these animals do feed on different species of krill in the region, as well as certain squid and smaller fish within the region. I don't know their approximate population. I don't think they're a very common penguin in general, but I guess when comparing it to certain species of Antarctic penguins and even certain species off the coast of South America, the South African penguins are a bit rare, but they're also having issues with possibly, I think it was overhunting to an extent, as well as like a low amount of food.
2,600 to 3,000.
Oh, with the yellow eyed.
Mature.
Yeah, still with the yellow-eyed penguin, that is few. Well, let's see what's going on. So long predating the arrival of humans in New Zealand, Aotearoa. Is that like the Latin name for New Zealand? Hmm.
They're all the way up the coast.
Yeah, so it's just showing
Well,
the
halfway up
adjacent
the coast, I guess.
populations here, all the way to Campbell Island. So first described by Jacques Bernard Humbrun and Honore Jacquinot in 1841. I'm guessing these are zoologists possibly coming in from like France. Yellow-eyed penguins are an endangered species endemic to New Zealand. They are regarded as tawanga. Oh, okay. That makes sense. I was wondering also, like maybe it's the penguin, but kind of an odd place to mention it. Anyway, treasured by Morai. Let's keep going. So since 2019, chicks on the New Zealand mainland have been affected by a deadly neonatal disease, respiratory distress syndrome, contributing to a decline to fewer than 115 breeding pairs. That is not good. That is unfortunate to hear. Um, what on earth? How did this occur? As one of the rarest penguin species in the world, yellow eyed penguins serve as an important indicator of ecosystem health, with their population trajectories reflecting broader ecosystem change, said senior author Professor Gemma Joghagan from the University of Otago and colleagues. Therefore, protecting yellow eyed penguins is critical for biodiversity conservation and maintaining the integrity of coastal ecosystems. Well, it's just really the penguin itself. Gosh, I was hoping that the South African penguin was like the only, penguin with a certain issue, like especially when it came to its population, because they're being hunted by like sub-Saharan African otters, Canadian, not Canadian, the South African caracals in the region.
Wait,
Um,
Canadians, do they migrate?
Not usually, sometimes. And no, there are no penguins in the Arctic, only in when you're talking about the Arctic and the Antarctic. And then you have it where in certain southern Pacific regions, as well as the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean, you do have certain penguin populations. Um, let's see. So, they are also an icon of the regional wildlife tourism industry, substantially contributing to the local economy. Um, let's see. So, in the new study, Professor Geo Hagon and co authors sequenced the complete genomes of 249 yellow eyed penguins from the New Zealand mainland, northern range. I'm guessing like the northern range of the population in general, not northern New Zealand. Sub-Antarctic Enderby, Auckland Islands, and Keppel Island southern range. They expected to confirm a simple two population structure. What they found was far more striking. Using a suite of cutting edge genomic tools, the researchers identify three genetically distinct groups with virtually no interbreeding between them. Whoa. Gosh. And now you have the low population. That's not good to hear. But the question is, how many penguins were already like originally historically inhabiting these islands to make it where they weren't very inbred, supposedly? The scale of their genetic differences, scientists concluded, warrants formally recognizing each as a separate subspecies. In this study, we used population genomics to investigate the evolutionary history and disease susceptibility of the endangered yellow-eyed penguin Hohoihu, one of the world's rarest penguin species. Okay, so what's going on? So, funded through Genomics Aotearoa, we generated whole genome data from 249 penguins across mainland New Zealand and the sub-Antarctic islands to better understand why chicks in the mainland population have been dying from a severe respiratory disease known as respiratory distress syndrome. Unexpectedly, we found that Hoiho are made up of three deeply divergent subspecies with no evidence of migration between them. Our analysis suggests that these populations have been separated for thousands of years, much earlier than previously thought. Um, okay, so let's bring up the larger Antarctic emperor penguin. So EMPEROR. So partially, I gotta. Hmm.
What?
I'm just wondering if it's a real picture.
Well, hold on.
Possibly is. I mean, they just have such a smooth
Oh, there's
feather
no way
texture.
this is real.
Also, when it comes to the oils on
Is that real?
their feathers, um, hmm. Yeah, usually the chicks would be adjacent to their own parents, and they usually only have one chick. Yeah, it seems a bit more realistic, I think. But the emperors are also so they do have a oily coating on their feathers that makes them waterproof. But when it comes to the emperor in general, this is the largest species of penguin on Earth. It can reach somewhere around 90 to 100 pounds or pushing almost 47 to 48 kilograms. And this animal also has the largest amount of blubber compared to its body size of any species of bird. This animal can be somewhere around 40 to 50% blubber. So, also, when it comes to the overall population range, there are some around 650,000 breeding pairs over in Antarctica. So, they are in much better condition, at least population wise, compared to what's going on with like South African penguins, the Australian penguins, and the New Zealand penguins. So, the penguins in the warmer areas are having a lot more issues. Let's see.
I keep looking at that one thinking, "That doesn't look real." And
Um,
now I think everything doesn't look real.
yeah, this one's possibly authentic. Definitely as
It's the
the
shadow that's bothering me here.
oh, right. Yeah, it does seem odd. Let's see, what is it? So when it comes to also the penguins, a larger percentage of their diet does consist of Antarctic krill. So depending on where the emperor penguins are, it can be somewhere between 35 to 50% of their diet is just Antarctic krill. And then smaller proportions are different species of fish as well as squid in the region. So back to New Zealand. Let's see. This means the critically endangered northern population is not simply a recent extension of the southern populations, but a distinct evolutionary lineage in its own right. We identified candidate genes linked to immune function and respiratory biology that may help explain why the northern population appears uniquely vulnerable to respiratory distress syndrome. These findings provide new insight into the role of host genetics in wildlife disease and have major implications for conservation management. After consultation with Ngai Tahu, the principal Iwai tribe of the South Island, New Zealand, who are Kayatakai guardians for the species, the authors propose new subspecies named rooted in Maori geography, Megadiptes antipodes, Morahai
Jesus.
haiku. For the northern population, it is interesting because when you're comparing this with like different species of maybe prehistoric mammals or prehistoric birds, pterosaurs, dinosaurs, even, you would just assume maybe that's just Greek or Latin. Maybe they stick in a bit of like a Celtic word, but no, that's interesting. So they just kind of sneaked in the um, New Zealand languages, snuck in. So, Megadiptes, Antipodes, Motu, Maha for Enderby Island with the Auckland Islands, and Megadiptes Antipodes Motu Ihupuku for Campbell Island. That's funny. So working in partnership with Ngai Tahu the
Jesus.
Katiaka Oihu, we hope this research will support urgent and targeted conservation action for each subspecies,
Woohoo.
particularly the rapidly declining northern lineage, which now numbers fewer than 115 breeding pairs. Oh, geez, this is kind of unfortunate for the um, penguins, but I mean, at least we got three different subspecies to name. I mean, that's always good to hear. It's really interesting to hear that we found three genetically distinct populations, but they didn't mention anything about their genetic variety, which I found a bit odd. That's a big question. Okay. Well, I bet even their feeding behavior might be slightly different because usually, if there's a slight bit of a genetic distinction, there is usually something going on with their feeding behavior too. Okay. So, if you have any questions about prehistoric or current animals, um, put it in the comments, and we'll give everybody about a minute. Well, yeah, put it in the chat is what I meant. Okay, well, since no one has put forth any questions, I guess we're going to call it here. So thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Happy International Anodontosaurus Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.